Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Today is Friday, December 3rd. And, we'll start here. How you guys doing today? Matthew, Matt, how you guys doing? Obviously, unless you've been living under a rock for, I don't know, the past 7 days, week and a half, the college football world is chaos. Coaches moving back and forth, players decommitting, committing. Thousands of players are in the transfer portal. It is everything that we love. But first, how are you doing today, Matthew?
I'm doing good, man. I've got no clue how we're going to keep this show under like 4 hours. And, obviously we record this every Friday. And by Sunday of this last week, I was like, oh my gosh, we've got so much to talk about, all the coaching changes particularly. And I'm really excited to get into some of this transfer portal stuff as well. So I'm excited. I'm doing good.
Dope. Yes, that's. I'm a little bit of a seasoned vet when it comes to producing and hosting these, so I'll keep us on task. Matt, how are you doing? You might be in the weirdest position of all because, and we'll get to more of it later, but it looks like Freeman has been hired at Notre Dame, which I think is great for you. But obviously Brian Kelly leaving was a little bit, shocking. How are you doing though?
I'm doing good. I love all the chaos, but I hate when it's surrounding my team so much. But, I'm excited and ready to get into it.
Yeah, I honestly feel like so much has happened already, and I honestly feel like this will only be the beginning. I think this summer is going to be absolutely insane. I think this recruiting, everything is going to be insane. So let's just hop right into it. Obviously. I have to give a Tate Martell update. He was at the Ohio State-Michigan game. His sister's still hot, so that's good. I did not find a trivia question today, so we're just going to skip that. We'll probably do that later because I like to, keep things moving. But so let's start with some news. And unfortunately, we have to start with a pretty sad note. I just want to highlight this story. I know probably everyone's seen it around, but it's pretty special. Tate Meyer was a 17-year-old football player. He had actually just visited Toledo over last weekend. And on Monday, there was a school shooting in Oxford, Michigan, killed 4 people, I believe now. He, football player, getting D1 offers. He rushed the school shooter to save his friends. He later succumbed to his injuries, but he was a real hero. And I don't want to get into how it's unbelievable, and I don't really do politics, that we still have school shootings, what seems like 3, 4, 5 times a year. But he's a real hero. Everyone needs to, check that story out. He's seems like a really, really good guy, and obviously just a real hero in a real tragic situation. And then I don't know how much you guys know for Barstool or whatever, but they did a post about the kid that died, and they said he's a hero and everything. And raggedy old hag bitch Keith Olbermann just came in over the top from the clouds. And I don't know if you've seen it. I'll send a tweet to you later. But he said something about like, oh, well, this kid was like, the kid that was the shooter was like a fascist, like Stool Presidente from Barstool. Like, dude, like I am not even in the real media, and like I understand that I can't say anything like that because you're just taking it to another level. The fact that Keith Olbermann, and now that baseball has become basically by far the third sport in America, no one really watches it. They're in a lockout, but he decides to come from the clouds and say something like that, and it's just ridiculous. Like Keith Olbermann, like you're old, you're a bitch, you fucking suck, dude. Like don't do that stuff. Don't say that stuff. Like I don't know how he doesn't get fired after that. But then again, he's I think 75 years old. He's probably tenured. But just a real mockery of a human being right there. And I've always said that I don't necessarily cheer for injuries, but if they happen, they happen. I am cheering for Keith Olbermann to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge 100% because that guy's a scumbag. But let's move on to some better things. Just real quickly, Bronco Mendenhall is stepping down at Virginia. Weird. He didn't really give a reason. He just said he's stepping down. And from what I understand, I mean, Virginia had a pretty decent season, and their quarterback was really good, right? Yeah. So that was a little bit out of left field, but whatever. And then Starting off with some of the crazy recruitments going on. Malachi Nelson, the number one quarterback, I don't know. One quarterback in the 2023 class had committed to Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley. He decommitted from Oklahoma and then recommitted to him at USC. And Riley Brown, the 5-star running back out of California, did the same. And then Steve Adazio is out at Colorado State after 2 years. I don't think anyone's really shocked about that. And then let's just get right into it with the transfer portal. Adrian Martinez, Eli Ricks, and we'll obviously highlight a couple more. But they've entered the transfer portal. It's going to be a crazy transfer portal, like open season. I don't know. I guess who are you guys most? I mean, we'll go over everyone and kind of go through there, but like right off the bat, who are you most interested to see like where they end up? I'll start with you, Matt. What about you? Hey, your mic's way too low or something. Turn it up. You're muted now. Matthew, we're going to start with you. Matt, try to figure that out. Go ahead, Matthew. We'll start with you, Matt. I'll help you out and figure it out. But, Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say Eli Ricks is probably the first one to watch just because he's probably the most notable out of all of them. Everything I've read about the situation, it looks like he's leaning Alabama. I know he came out with his top 4, Alabama and Ohio State, as Justin outlined for us, are kind of the top 2 far and away right now. But he's got great connections with Nick Saban, and I think that's where he's going to end up. But what really caught my eye was Dylan Gabriel and Adrian Martinez. I was confused at first because apparently several years back, Nebraska had another quarterback named Martinez.
Don't even get me started. I'm just gonna be honest with you, Matthew. For the past 8 years, I've been treating them as the same human being, so they're the same human being to me.
I really thought we had like Tate Martell 2.0 here.
Yeah. Halfway through the season, I was like, "This is Adrian Martinez. He's been there since like 2011. Like, there's not possible." But yes, no, I hear you. So keep going ahead if you want to keep going.
For him, the first landing spot that came to my mind was with Dylan Gabriel transferring. Maybe we see Martinez move over to UCF. And the second spot that came to my mind was at Auburn. It's a little unsure with Bo Nix. If he went to the draft, maybe he's like a 7th round talent, maybe undrafted.
I would think.
So I think there will be a spot there for him as well. I've seen a couple spots pop up in the Pac-12 for him as well. But that's where I'm going to stand on those 3 for the time being.
I got you. Matt, we got your mic fixed or you're still muted? All right, well, we're waiting. I'll go ahead and I'll give mine then. I am incredibly surprised. Well, I'm not surprised that he joined because after I read about it, I agree with you on Eli Ricks. LSU is like, if you look at like how their recruiting class is still holding together right now after they just switched coaches. Andy Staples said it the other day on his podcast, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. LSU and Ohio State are 2 of like the biggest universities where you commit to a school and not necessarily a coach. And it's just because in Ohio, like the Browns suck, the Bengals suck. You grow up dreaming to play for Ohio State. And in Louisiana, you grow up like wanting to play for LSU. But Ricks was from Southern California. He played at IMG. He's really, really, really good. I think he's going to be better than Derek Stingley once he comes out. Yes, I agree that I think I would lean towards Alabama with him, but I can't count Georgia out. I just can't. And you didn't even mention Georgia, but any defensive back, in my opinion, that isn't looking at Georgia is doing who thinks they're really good is doing a disservice to themselves because what they've shown this year, and we can't guarantee it's going to happen next year. But what they've shown this year is that they are one of the only schools in the country that will have an elite defense year in and year out. So I'm very excited for him. I'm also excited for Martinez. I just don't know where he's going to go. He's been turnover prone for 12 years, obviously the same person. But somewhere will open up for him, definitely. And then I'm going to switch over to Matt real quick because I know this guy already committed and is already, I think, on campus over there now. But Jake Haener is gone and is going to Washington. And people did not like that at Fresno State. Let me just say that. Go ahead, Matt.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, you're good. You're good now. Perfect. Sorry.
All right. No worries. Yeah, I mean, I was saying I was most excited about Eli Ricks.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, he actually switched. He was going to Mater Dei and actually transferred over to IMG Academy in high school. So, but yeah, he's from Southern California. I think that's where he ends up personally, but it's an interesting 4 teams on his list. Yeah. I think he'll end up going
USC?
there. I do. Yeah. I think Lincoln Riley will be able to pull it off.
That's a huge. I mean, if Lincoln Riley can, because I think he said he wants to commit like by the middle of December. If that can be like Lincoln Riley's first transfer portal guy, then USC's got to be happy. But some other names in the transfer portal that I know we were talking about, and I don't know how much because I covered the FCS a ton last spring, so I follow a ton of like FCS players, coaches, media people. Everyone and their brother who's had a better than horrible season at the FCS and D2 level are all reopening their commitment, and they're all looking to go D1. And great, I think that's what the transfer portal is for. I would also hesitate and say, guys, you got recruited to an FCS school in a Division II school for a reason. But I'm all out there for like, you know what? Go ahead and try it. I just don't want to see these guys come back and like have to transfer back and then start complaining like, oh, well, this coach didn't like me. No, they didn't recruit you out of high school and they didn't because you weren't good enough. So, but yes, everyone in like the FCS D2, they're all transferring. I think the biggest one other than Jake Haener going to Washington with, which we'll get into in a second. I think that's a little bit of a weird fit. Dylan Gabriel going to Ole Miss. And I know I mentioned it in the text, I believe. I heard Andy Staples say it when I was listening to his podcast. He says, I mean, obviously Arch isn't like a lock to go to Ole Miss. I don't even think it's in his top 3. But if Lane Kiffin can bridge the gap between now with Dylan Gabriel and then to Arch, they got something building in Oxford then there. But, yeah, I don't know. Who else do we got in here? Matthew, I'll go straight to you. You said so a couple Pac-12 teams, and I think you said UCF as well. Where do you think Adrian Martinez ends up? Because this is the one guy that, like, he has a pretty unique skill set of running, but he's not the best passer. So he kind of reminds me a little bit of Michael Penix Jr. He's more athletic and faster and definitely is a better runner, but Michael Penix Jr. at the end of his Indiana career, like literally couldn't complete 5-yard slants. So, yeah, I'll just pass to you. Where do you think he heads up? And I'll just preface this by saying, I think the Pac-12 would be a great place for him to go. Man.
Me? Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I can see that for sure. I saw a tweet the other day that I wanted to bring up, and I wish I knew who posted it, but they had like 3 followers. So I'm not quoting a real person. But it was Adrian Martinez throws name into transfer. It's immediately intercepted in return for a touchdown.
That's hilarious.
I love that tweet. I think it describes it really perfectly. And I think it hit the nail right on the head. He would be a great fit in a lot of Pac-12 teams. Obviously, this isn't the guy who's going to one of college football's powerhouses, but he could be a really fun gadget out west specifically. Specific schools, it's hard to say that any particularly come to mind. I'm still leaning UCF. I know that's the other direction, but that's where I see him as the best fit. I think especially now that they've got Gus Malzahn down there and he's had a year down there, I think they're really looking for their next guy.
Cool. I feel that. Yeah, I don't know why this didn't pop into my head, and I guess I kind of ask you, Matt. Could Adrian Martinez end up being the replacement for Jake Haener out west at Fresno State?
I had 2 schools written down. I think he belongs in the Mountain West. I had Fresno State and I had Nevada because they're both going to lose their quarterbacks there. I mean, obviously Fresno already lost Haener. Carson Strong's going to go to the NFL. I think he would fit out west in the Mountain West in one of those schools losing their quarterback. Yeah,
I agree. Matthew, when you were talking, I was thinking in my head, I was like, why doesn't he just go to Fresno State? Like, yeah. But I do really like the UCF pick because obviously they've had like who was the dude who – it wasn't Dylan Gabriel. Who was the dude who – Mackenzie Milton, who absolutely just the worst knee injury ever.
Mm-hmm.
They've been very good with dual threat quarterbacks, so I can see that. But I can also see him going out west. I think that's I think Adrian Martinez, if he ever wants to, continue to play football, he needs to have a really good year next year. And I think that best serves him in either a small conference like the Mountain West or in a no defense conference like the Pac, or actually the Big 12. I don't know. But I just feel him in the Pac-12 a little bit. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I didn't get your take on Eli Ricks, Matt. So where do you think where do you think he's leaning? I know that we said he obviously said Alabama and Ohio State, and you said you think he ends up at Southern California. Why do you think he ends up at Southern California? Just because it's a fair say. I just haven't seen any real communication between him and Lincoln Riley. I don't think he was ever linked to Oklahoma. I don't know, but yeah, take the floor.
So I was reading up on it. He ended up going to Oregon, because of Coach Orgeron is why he went to LSU, and there was another guy there. I can't remember who it was. He had a really good relationship with. The first offer he got when he was a freshman in high school was a guy that's working at USC now, and he brought that up. That would be the primary reason why he would go to USC. It's not because of the Lincoln Riley, not because of the new coaching staff and all the transfers and all that. It's because of the relationships he has within the athletic department. And I mean, that's his first offer. I think he's going to really be interested in that position.
I agree a little bit with that because he is from Southern California. I'm also going to say I think a better choice for Eli Ricks would be another SEC school like Alabama or I guess an Ohio State or even a Michigan, something like one of the bigger schools, just because he has to have a good year next year. And with Lincoln Riley, yes, should all things go according to plan, they should have a pretty good year next year. Like I expect them pretty much right away to start contending for the Pac-12 championships. But there is, and Matthew, I'll kind of kick it to you on this one. I think there is, but do you think there is a little bit of risk just going with Lincoln Riley in the first year move? Like obviously we think he's going to be good there, but the first year I don't really know what to expect. I don't know what kind of players he's going to get in the transfer portal. What are your thoughts on that, Matthew?
I think generally when you have a coach who has their first year in a program, it is a risk. However, this is a pretty particular situation where I don't see it that way as much. I'm looking at the guys who have been following Lincoln Riley. I'm looking at the people who have been decommitting from Oklahoma, who we can assume eventually are going to be committing to USC. And it's one of the few programs I really expect to see hit the ground running. And so I don't see it as very much of a risk over there.
Okay. No, I completely understand that. I just think that he needs to have a really good season next year. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, and I guess I'll go to you guys and ask this too, but it wouldn't really necessarily surprise me if USC and Lincoln Riley are competing for the college football playoff next year. What about you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
It just wouldn't surprise me. I think he's going to get a lot of talent. I think he's going to get at least 2 to 3 or even 4, maybe more of those Oklahoma players. I keep referencing Andy Staples in this, and we're going to kind of move on to the coaching carousel that's literally just been – oh, no, actually we're not yet. I think one of the bigger names that I almost just forgot to say, where do we think Spencer Rattler's going? My opinion of the sort is that he needs to go to Arizona or Arizona State in the desert so he can be a rattler, the rattlesnake. He needs to use his name finally for something like that. He can't be going to Michigan or Wisconsin. That's not going to work. But I also have no idea where Rattler ends up. My first guess would be SMU or TCU just because I feel like everyone goes there. But I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on him, Rattler? I'll start with you, Matthew.
Yeah, I'm right hand in hand with you. It's funny, the longer he stayed in the portal, and I say that, it hasn't even been a full week. But as it's happened, the tier of school that people have expected him to arrive at has kind of cheapened a little bit. When it first happened, I remember hearing several people talk about USC as a destination for him. In my mind, that's nowhere close to an option. I would 100 times I would take Jaden Daniels over Spencer Rattler. That's just the camp that I reside in. I do see SMU and TCU as both really good targets for him. It's tricky. I don't know specifically where I like to place him. I'd like to see where a couple more of these coaches end up and how some of these recruiting classes shape up, because there's really no pressure to transfer right this instant. But I don't know that I have a definitive answer at the moment.
All right. What about you, Matt?
So I agree that Arizona, obviously Arizona State, Jaden Daniels already announced he's returning next year. So that's really not really an option, but Arizona, that's not really a good enough program. He probably has his sights set higher than that. I think Oregon and UCLA out west are both options, but I don't know that he'll have an offer from either of them. But the school I think that makes the most sense, but I don't think he'll do it, and I don't think it's really a great fit for Mike Gundy, but Oklahoma State I think would be a good fit with the defense they have, and I think he would take them to another level.
My problem here is that I'm not going to lie to you guys. I just don't think Spencer Rattler is that good. Like, granted, that good. He's not up with the elites. You guys will say C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. I wouldn't say C.J. Stroud, but whatever. What about Baylor? Jerry Bohannon is a junior quarterback. He's done okay this year. But in my opinion, if he goes to Baylor and takes over that quarterback's position, he still has good football in him. He still will probably be in the NFL one day. And Jerry Bohannon's done a pretty good job this year, but Dave Aranda he was a defensive coordinator for LSU, and he's a defensive guy. So if he could get someone who has experience at the quarterback position, especially in the Big 12, I think he is going to go after Rattler pretty hard. I think, at least in my opinion. And then before we kind of move on a little bit, all right, I need a number percentage from each of you. What are the chances Caleb Williams goes to USC with Lincoln Riley? Matthew or Matt, either one. Everyone's got an answer. Spit it out.
1%.
Really?
I don't think it's happening.
I was going to throw out a 35.
I was going to say 30. Why do you think so? Why not?
He's got a 5-star recruit quarterback already, Jackson.
Yeah,
Dart.
but he's not coming until next year.
He's playing this year.
No, he's not. Oh,
Jackson Dart.
Oh,
he
Jackson
played this year, and he played well.
Yeah, well, he got hurt. Okay, I agree that the
that's two quarterbacks you're trying to beat out now.
Yeah,
there's no way. There's no way.
Yeah, I think Jackson Dart will be good. I don't know. I could see Lincoln Riley kind of just pulling on his strings and bringing him there. I think it would be a bad move for Caleb Williams. Personally, I think Caleb Williams should transfer out of Oklahoma. I think anyone, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but anyone that got recruited by Lincoln Riley should be looking for somewhere else. Just because, and this is my opinion, you guys can tell me what you think. It sucks that Lincoln Riley left, but it's also a perfect time to rebrand your school. Oklahoma is going to the SEC. They'll be able to score points. People can score points. It's not SEC scoring does happen. It's not back 2010 where it was 7-3. Scoring does happen. But if you got a coach, say, and Dave Aranda just comes to mind, he won't go to Oklahoma, but you know what I mean, a defensive-minded coach, I think it's a great time to rebrand yourself as a defensive team. And that way, I think all those offensive guys like Hazelwood, the tight end or Stogner or whatever, those guys are already on the way out, but I think even more guys end up on their way out. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of guys that he brought in are going to leave for sure.
Yeah, and I guess we'll hop over into the coaching a little bit. Who do you guys think is the best candidate for the Oklahoma job?
I agree with you that Matt Campbell was the best option, but it sounds like they've already narrowed it down to Brent Venables. It sounds like they're keened in on him.
you're our insider here because I've not heard that at all. Matthew, what about
Brent Venables?
Well, I do want to say, first of all, Matt Jakubowski has been great. Whenever anything has happened, he's been the first to let me and Justin know. We get a text 30 seconds after anything happens. So he's been all my information.
When you were just lining up all these transfer portal people yesterday, I was like, how do you know this? Like, but no, yeah, you've been incredible with that. Honestly, had you not like brought up all those transfer portal thing in the text conversation yesterday, I may have accidentally just skipped over the transfer portal in writing the outline, but we'll move on. Keep going, Matthew, whatever you're saying.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We were talking about the Oklahoma job.
Yeah, like rebranding it because it's not going to be as easy in the SEC to just put up 70 points a game and win. It's just not going to happen in the SEC. So yeah,
I understand storybook-wise why Brent Venables makes sense. You're moving into the SEC. You want a defensive-focused guy. Brent Venables has obviously, he was at OU. But I don't see that as a great fit right now. Matt Campbell is another guy who it makes sense a little bit on paper. I don't see Matt Campbell leaving. And so I feel bad. It's like the third time I've done this already in 26 minutes that we've been on the podcast. I'm going to tell you that I don't have a great answer, but all the answers that have been presented to me, I just don't love them.
Yeah, what about you, Matt? I'm looking at Venables now, and it does seem like Sports Illustrated just came out and said that the players are predicting that they think that it's going to be Venables. I honestly thought Venables – I'm actually a little bit shocked if they hire Venables. He's a very good defensive coordinator, but – in kind of the same way as Matt Campbell, he may have held on too long. Like, he makes $2.5 million as a defense coordinator, the most in the country, which is crazy. So he doesn't really have the money motivation to leave. And obviously Oklahoma can offer him a lot of money. I just don't know. Like, he's obviously a very good defense coordinator. He's a very good defensive recruiter. I just don't know if he's that good a coach anymore. I would be interested to see how good of a coach he is because he's been under Dabo Swinney's wing for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So it's a little bit weird for me to think Venables is going to take the Oklahoma job. Like, I feel like if he's going to take a job, it would be like a smaller Power 5 team, like a Purdue or something, kind of like that, or somewhere like that in the SEC, like an Arkansas or something like that. But yeah, Venables, I guess, makes sense, and like I said, the players are predicting it. So you think it's Venables, Matt, and you think it's a good hire?
It's a decent hire, but I don't know if he's going to be able to be the recruiter that they've seen in the past with Lincoln Riley or really any other coaches. I don't know if he'll be able to recruit. That's the worry I have about that. I mean, they do need a defensive-minded guy. He'll probably be able to pull a lot of defensive guys, and they're going to the SEC, but the offensive guys, I don't know if they'll be able to pull those guys in, and they'll struggle in the SEC, especially today's SEC with the more scoring there is now.
All right, so we'll get into coaching in a sec. I kind of have a question, and Matthew, this would be more, I guess, laid out for you. I'm trying to think how to word this. I guess I'll just come on and say it. Why the fuck are all these 5-star defensive linemen like Walter Nolan, who was it? There was another one like a week ago. Why are they all committing to Texas A&M? Like, Jimbo Fisher had let's be honest. After beating Alabama, he had a disappointment of a season. That was a much better Texas A&M team. They were an elite defensive squad that just didn't play like it. And I got to say, I understand the want to play in the SEC. I get that. But why is the number one overall recruit going to Texas A&M? Maybe you can explain it. Maybe you can't. I just like your opinion.
Yeah, it's a trend I've noticed with A&M under Jimbo Fisher, which is even when they haven't quite measured up to the top tier of talent in the SEC, the Alabamas and the Georgias, they've been one of the few schools that can actually match them with size along the lines of scrimmage. And that's been the formula for their success for a while. So I'm not surprised at all to see Jimbo Fisher prioritizing the offensive and defensive lines because that's really been where they started with their strength and built out from there. Even to where now, when early in the season, they looked like they could sneak into the playoff, and, they got off track, but they still had a really good season. And they're still lacking at some of those skill positions. So I see them building out from there. I see it as a great strategy by Fisher, though, who I'm not a fan of. But I see it as a great strategy that he's going about it that way.
And either of you can respond. Like, it's fun of this. I mean, since Jimbo Fisher left FSU in a very bad state, he hasn't made the playoff with Texas A&M. He hasn't been into an SEC championship game, I don't think. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't really know. I just don't think he's that good of a coach. Maybe he is a great recruiter, and we've seen coaches out there to do it. Like Urban Meyer was a great recruiter. I just don't think he's that good a coach, and I don't think Texas A&M. I don't understand Texas A&M. Like, it's a cult. They're weird people, and then they get these 5-star linemen from Georgia. It's just weird. It's just weird to me. I'm sorry. But I'm also still in the same sense that, like, I think every top level cornerback and defensive back should go to Alabama. Like, I have no idea why they don't all go to Alabama. I think every premier edge rusher should go to Ohio State because they churn them out every single year. So I don't know. It's been weird. It used to be like that a little bit. And Ohio does produce edge rushers like crazy. It's weird. But it's just, I just don't know why. If you're Travis Hunter is the 2022 number 1 overall prospect. He's a corner. He's going to Florida State. Like, you're going to go play for Mike Norvell on a team that's going to be 7-5. So I just don't get it.
He's from Georgia too.
Exactly. Like, why is he not going to Georgia? Like, I almost look at Georgia the same way I look at, like, and then I look at Georgia like every premier linebacker should go to Georgia. It just, I don't get it. I don't get it. But these kids these days are different. They're young people like you guys. You guys are even a little bit older still. But I just don't get it some of the times with these recruiting things. I guess, but right before we get into coaching, what are your guys' opinions on? I mean, you guys have been on college campuses before. I mean, Oklahoma, the students there were signs everywhere. Lincoln Riley's a traitor. I was shocked at Fresno State how many Jake Haener is a traitor. I guess we didn't really see this last year, and this may be just because the transfer portal is new and everyone's doing it now. But I thought, like, and I don't blame them. It's whatever. They're college kids. Have fun. I thought it was a little over the top. Like, get over it, guys. Like, get over it. Oklahoma, like, you're going to be fine. Like, Fresno State, you know what? You might not be fine, so you might ever be mad. But I don't know. What are your guys' opinions on that?
Yeah, I think people are overdoing it. I mean, coaches leave for better jobs all the time.
Oh, don't even Matt, I'm sure you were standing outside your house with a Notre Dame jersey and a sign in your hand and a pitchfork saying, fuck you, Brian Kelly, for leaving. I know that's what you were doing.
It was running through my head, but I didn't know to pull the trigger.
What about you, Matthew?
I don't know. I mean, it is a little bit over the top and outlandish at times, but I think it's part of what makes the sport great.
I agree.
And one thing about the transfer portal is the way that we've scrutinized coaches from going to university. Now we get to do that with players, which probably isn't great because I feel a little better picking on like a full-grown man than like some college kid.
Not like a 19-year-old kid.
I feel like we should go easy on the kids, especially these high schoolers who decommit from a university. And then you've got like these 30 and 40-year-old alumni who are smacking the kid on Twitter.
Yeah,
I love the passion. It's part of the sport, but let's reserve it for the adults.
Yes, I've always said that I think it's fair for us to criticize like college players that are actually playing. I would never go over the top and outlandishly be like, I want you to die or something like that. But I've always taken the approach with these recruits or anything like that, like, you can't talk to him. Like, what are you doing, man? The kid's 17 years old. He's got his prom in 2 months, and you're telling him that he's, a racist bitch because he didn't come to Texas A&M. So it does go over the top, but I completely agree. There really isn't another sport out there, maybe like rugby or whatever, that just brings out the pure hatred in people like college football. And I love it. It's great. But Obviously, the transfer portal is huge. Also, fuck you, Dabo. I just had to put it in there somewhere. The transfer portal is huge, but what has happened in the last 5 days across the coaching carousel, we've never seen anything like it before, ever, really. And we saw 2 moves happen that really there's only ever been one coach to do a power-to-power move, and that was Jimbo Fisher. And the writing was kind of on the wall for him. He was like, Florida State was getting worse, and he needed a way out. So we saw Lincoln Riley move from Oklahoma to USC, and then Brian Kelly leaves Notre Dame and is heading down to LSU. First off, which one is the better hire in your guys' opinion? And Matt, I'll start with you just because it kind of involves you.
So I love Brian Kelly, but I think the better hire is Lincoln Riley. I think he's going to turn USC, just like he said, into the mecca of college football. There's too many good players out of Southern California.
I absolutely see that point. What about you, Matthew?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Particularly what I love about that hire is we talk a lot when we're talking recruiting. We talk about these California quarterbacks. There's just something about them, but there's always these insane quarterbacks coming out of California. And Lincoln Riley is the guy who can go and say, well, look at my track record. How many Heisman winning quarterbacks has he produced, And so I think it's a perfect fit. And I think USC is going to be good now for a while. I don't see this really not going well.
I agree. Lincoln Riley is a great hire. So I agree with you guys on that fact. I think he's going to quickly turn USC around. And honestly, it's better for college football that the Pac-12 has at least a leader. Like for the past couple of years, we've seen granted they're on late, A, and B, I just don't have any interest in watching the Pac-12 because no one's really that good. Like they beat each other up, and it isn't like the SEC cannibalizing each other because all those teams are good. It's just that in the Pac-12 they just cannibalize each other because they have off nights like every other week. But I'm also so I agree he's a good hire. I think Brian Kelly is far and away the best hire in college football probably since Nick Saban came to Alabama. He had taken at Notre Dame, and anything I say here, Matt, you can say I'm wrong. Feel free. He had taken Notre Dame to, at this point, in my opinion, the highest they could pretty much go in recruiting because they do have actual standards. Like you have to, I think it's your ACT has to be like a 24 to get in. It's somewhere either 24, 26, which is not easy. Well, it is easy. Maybe not easy for athletes. I don't know. It's easy. And now, so he's had to deal with rules like that. And he basically, in my opinion, he left Notre Dame because he felt like he had reached the pinnacle of Notre Dame. And I kind of agree with him. He can have those starters at Notre Dame, but he's never going to have the depth at Notre Dame that those SEC schools have. He's just never going to do it. He's not going to have the depth at Notre Dame, and it's not going to happen. And he had taken them to a new recruiting level. And now I think personally, Brian Kelly is one of the best X and O's coaches in the country. Granted, he puts great help around him. And I thought him trying to get Freeman to LSU with him by making him the highest paid thing, that was a smart move by him. I think Marcus Freeman wanted to coach Notre Dame. But I think he's just going to crush it down there. I think he's going to recruit whoever the hell he wants. And it's almost like he's fishing in a bigger pond now than he was in Notre Dame. And that's not Notre Dame's fault. They just have standards. And I think that Kelly was kind of fed up with having to deal with players, passing tests to get into schools. So he went to LSU, and literally there isn't maybe another job in the country where it literally does not matter what you do as long as you win a football game. There are no rules. There are no standards. And Brian Kelly said, sign me up for that, and I'm fine with it. So, but I agree. I think both hires are good. I think Lincoln Riley kind of fucked Oklahoma, but whatever. I mean, that's what they do. I don't know. But so now I think we all talked about all year how like LSU and USC, these high profile jobs that like they never come open at the same time. Well, they've been filled, and now we have two other huge openings, really. And obviously, now we only have one with Marcus Freeman taking over at Notre Dame. So I'll ask you, Matt, first. How do you? We talked about it a little yesterday in the chat. How do you feel about Marcus Freeman?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of kids will want to play for him. I think he'll do good recruiting, but I do think it's a little worrying, a first-time head coach at a big school like that, big job like that. But I think a lot of kids will want to play for him. I think he'll do a good job. I think he'll be a good coach for them.
What about you,
Pretty
Matthew?
excited about it.
Yeah, I think you should be. I think if you weren't going to get Luke Fickell, and I'll get to him in a couple minutes. If you weren't going to get Luke Fickell, I think Marcus Freeman is the best young coaching candidate in the country, and I think he'll do. I think he'll do a really good job at Notre Dame. My only worry, and I told you this yesterday, is he's an Ohio State guy, and so is Luke Fickell too. So I have to believe that, and this has been known, I guess, around Ohio and the Midwest. I don't know if you knew, Matt, but when the NFL comes knocking, it's most likely Ryan Day is going to leave. He is built to be an NFL coach. He did the system with Chip Kelly. He's built to be an NFL coach. So eventually he will leave to the NFL, I think. And I think Ohio State will be just fine because they'll have either Freeman right there if they want him, or they'll have Fickell right there if they want him. But Matthew, what were your thoughts on the Marcus Freeman hire?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest values is how much it was a preventative measure almost. As Brian Kelly left, the unanimous vote in the locker room very quickly became, we want Marcus Freeman to be our guy. Had he gone to LSU or had Notre Dame looked somebody else for their coach, we would have seen very similar to like we see in Oklahoma. We would have seen decommits. I think we would have seen transfers. And I think it would have been a significant step back for that program. So beyond the positives that come with just him being possibly a great coach, we have to factor in having that continuity is something that you can't take for granted, especially looking at spots like Oklahoma right now and how they're doing.
And then before we get into, who we think maybe we'll take the Oklahoma, or we did that a little bit. Or maybe we'll talk about who, I don't know. We'll talk about other I do want to talk about Billy Napier in a second. And I completely forgot what question I was going to ask. So never mind. All right. So Matt, you said you like Billy Napier, I believe. Are you a little bit more worried now that Florida made their move early and maybe jumped too quickly, or are you just fine with Billy Napier? And that's fine too. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I still love the move. I don't think it was too early. Scott Strickland had made up his mind pretty quickly with Dan Mullen going out that Billy Napier was going to be the next guy. I love how sure we were as a program of that. The tagline that keeps going around, I'm sure everybody's seen it by now, scared money, don't make money. So very excited for where this is going to go. And I think right off the bat, anybody who had any questions about it or any concerns, those were put to rest pretty quickly with how soon he's jumped on the recruiting trail already, even still coaching Louisiana and preparing for the conference championship game. Recruiting has been through the roof. We had assistant coaches doing visits. Billy Napier himself has been doing visits. So right off the bat, we're fixing what's broken. And I think there's a lot of good years to come because of that.
I agree with you. I think if Florida wasn't going to make a big move higher, and I think it was a good option for them not to make a big move, because then they had I feel like Florida kind of not necessarily as much as Oklahoma, but Florida kind of needs to rebrand itself in the 2020s, where they are a high-flying offense, but they will also kick your ass in the trenches. Those were the good Florida teams. Those were the Tim Tebow, unfortunately, teams. But they were the teams who won the national championship. And I think Billy Napier not being this already egotistical, head coach, I think it's a good move for them. I do, and I think at Florida it's perfect right now for him. I think he's kind of it's almost good because Napier's kind of just in his own world. I was gonna ask you, he is coaching Louisiana. Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. That makes the pick much better and easier. But he's kind of on his own island anymore. He's not hearing about these. He doesn't care. And Florida doesn't have to hear about or even go out and try and offer contract to these big name guys just because that's what's floating around. So I think them getting him in, and he's already out recruiting, and he's shown that he's a decent guy, at least so far. He's still going to coach Louisiana. So, I actually like the Napier hire too. I still think it's an under the radar hiring, but I think that's exactly what Florida needed. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, that's exactly what I had written down. Is it's an underrated hire. I mean, nobody's talking about it because all the big names that are moving, but I think he'll be a really good coach for them.
All right, and then before we get into that, thoughts on so there are a lot of people with different thoughts on this. I think the Brian Kelly text, when he texted it, I don't know if you guys all saw it. I'm sure everyone saw it. I don't hate him for that. That's the quickest way to get the message out to everyone on your team right away. And the 7 a.m. thing, granted, I'm lazy and old. I probably would have skipped it. But those are athletes that are, usually up at 7 a.m. I believe they had like a morning lift afterwards or something like that. But still, Brian Kelly sends a text, calls them all in at 7 in the morning, and we all know Brian Kelly's not a good human being. There have been pictures that have come out with him lately. He killed a human being. But just the speech he gave to the players, the amount of times he used me, I, my family, my progress, things like that, I was a little bit shocked. And if I'm a player at Notre Dame right now, I'm like, I sat in that meeting, I was like, this was an absolute waste of time. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts?
I'm actually really now even more so hoping we can just somehow sneak into the playoffs and Marcus Freeman can pull some type of upset off, because it would be a big slap in his face.
Oh my God.
I know it's a pretty big dream, but
we'll talk about it. I don't know if it is. The fact that Brian Kelly left and it took all the headlines of him leaving, and it kind of like put the Notre Dame playoff thing like deep down, like we didn't really have to think about it. I think they're a lot closer to making the playoff than people realize. My only problem is the committee has said in the past, and they didn't show it, but in 2014, JT Barrett went down and Cardell Jones had to come in. The committee has always said they take into, and the NCAA basketball tournament committee has also said they take in injuries and things outside of the realm of the playing field into consideration. And Notre Dame not having their head coach, I think they would be hard pressed to find a way to sneak them in. But there is definitely a world where a number of teams lose this weekend and Notre Dame finds itself right in the mix. So, Matthew, do you have anything to say on that? Sorry, I kind of skipped over you.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. I was just looking at the rankings a minute ago, just looking at Notre Dame's path. And the unfortunate news is that it's not super likely that one of the chain of events happens. However, the good news is that there's about 13 different chain of events that can happen where Notre Dame ends up in. So you add all those together, 13 things that can happen, each at 1% likelihood, that's a 13% chance. So,
all right. And then a couple more coaching moves real quick. We already talked about Napier. This is a very and you guys don't care as much. This is the MAC. It's right, like all the schools are right about me. I do the MAC. I cover the basketball. I cover football a little bit. Akron is hiring Joe Moorhead. And I'm a little bit scared because Joe Moorhead is a very, very good coach. And I don't know why he's going to Akron. Their program is literally the worst, might be the worst in the entire country. But I have a feeling Joe Moorhead's going to turn that around. And I'm a little bit scared because I like Kent. I like all the other MAC teams. I hate Akron. So Joe Moorhead's a good coach, in my opinion. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? I was more surprised than anything. He was kind of like lowering himself to Akron.
I don't know a lot about it.
Whatever. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. No,
I just love that every week we find time to talk Akron. I don't know how it keeps happening.
That is so true. That is so true. I always bring up Akron because they're so bad. But the funny thing is we were talking about the transfer portal. Akron did have one wide receiver. It was a freshman All-American. They basically posted the freshman All-American, and his next tweet was like, "I'm entering the transfer portal." So he's out of there too. So, but all right, let's move on. I threw in a little bit of some prospect, draft prospect things for my boy Matt, because I got a couple questions, and Matthew, feel free to ask questions or, chime in. I have seen a couple mocks, not a lot, a couple mocks with Aiden Hutchinson as the number 1 pick. You have to be, in my opinion, the dumbest scout / general manager to take Aiden Hutchinson over Kayvon Thibodeau. And I'm going to go to you, Matt, and please don't tell me you agree with Aiden Hutchinson over Kayvon Thibodeau.
No. So I think it's interesting that people are like, it's definitely recency bias. It always happens. Every time something happens, everyone goes crazy about something that just happened. But interestingly enough, I do think he's a top 10 prospect. I think he's actually number 6 on my list, but I have 3 edge rushers ahead of him. That's how good this defensive class is. All right. I think – sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a sec. I know I kind of ripped Aiden Hutchinson in the outline. He is likely a top 10 pick. I'm not an idiot. He is a likely top 10 pick. I'm not happy about, like I said, I've never been a huge Ohio State fan, but it always benefits me when they win because everyone else around me is happier. And of course, we had Thanksgiving last Saturday at my mother's side of the family, who are all live in Columbus and are huge Ohio State fans. So I got to watch the game there with them, and it was really fun. Really fun. I got out of there as soon as I could. Hutchinson, he's going to be a top 10 pick. I just think it's crazy recency bias. And if you look at his film over the entire course of the year, some of his play on the defensive line, I will say this, he's very good against the run at times, but there are also times he looks lost or he gets just pushed out of the way by the offensive lineman. And I do think he ends up cleaning up a lot of sacks. Now that I say that, I agree he's probably a top 10 pick. But the fact that people were putting him in mocks over Thibodeau, even just at number 1 overall, was crazy to me. Matthew, what did you think about that?
I don't keep up to date as much with a lot of this draft stuff, but from my observations, I'm right in line with Matt Jakubowski here. I'm very impressed with Aiden Hutchinson, but even seeing that performance, I knew what was going to follow. I knew he was going to – the market would overreact and he would shoot up a couple boards, maybe a little more so than he should. I still have Kayvon Thibodeau over him, definitely. I'm curious to see who these other 3 edge rushers are, so I'm excited to get into that.
Yeah, Matt, who are these other 3 edge rushers you got ahead of Aiden Hutchinson?
DeMarvin Leal has been a top 3 for me since midseason.
But is he going to play on the inside more in the NFL?
He's 285, 290 pounds, so he'll be able to kind of fluctuate.
He'll move around.
He'll move around. George Karlaftis is also pretty big, but he's definitely an edge guy too. So I have those 2 both ahead of him as well. So those 3, Thibodeau and those 2.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree with Karlaftis. He's not had a great season, but physically he just looks like an NFL edge rusher, and oddly enough, he's younger than Kayvon Thibodeau. So I completely agree there. I do think Leal will be used more early on, at least on the edge, I would think. But I think as he gets better, they'll move him around like they do most good defensive linemen now. And then Kayvon Thibodeau, Karlaftis, Leal. So we covered them all. Any other big risers, big fallers for you this week?
One guy I feel like doesn't really get talked about as a first-round guy or a high first-round guy in the NFL draft. Nakobe Dean has had an absolutely insane year, and I think he's catapulted himself into the top 15 or close to it. And, it doesn't really get talked about a lot. So I think that's the biggest riser throughout the season for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've in almost every mock I've seen in the past week, he's top 15 for sure. I've seen him as high as 9, I think, and then as low as 13, 14. But I've seen him mostly around 12. 12, excuse me. I'm sorry. I don't know, Matthew. What are your thoughts? Or you know what? Never mind. I would ask you, Matt, real question. What do you think of the Ohio State receivers? Where are they going? I think Garrett Wilson's better than Olave. I think Olave needs to get to a good fit for him, I think. But I think if he is in a good fit, he's going to be incredible. I mean, his route running is pristine. His hands are great. His ball attack point is crazy. So is Garrett Wilson's. and you guys have obviously seen how the Browns have been doing so well over the past couple of weeks that it's just been awesome. Every Sunday has been a blast for me. But I would love them to pick up Garrett Wilson. So I guess, Matt, I'm kind of more asking, who are your top receivers this year?
Obviously the Ohio State kids. George Pickens, for me, he just came back this week. I think he's going to be a big factor in the playoff too. He's my number one receiver, easily. Like I watched these kids in the offseason. He is absolutely insane.
Okay.
He can do everything you want.
Matthew, I'm going to switch it back to you real quick then. I did see Pickens play. He played a little bit last week for Georgia Tech. I think if he can come back and actually have an impact, I already don't think Georgia's going to lose. If they were able to get a weapon like Pickens on their offense with both those running backs they have and Stetson Bennett, I mean, I'll go on a tangent real quick. Sorry, I'll go off. Everyone keeps saying that like JT Daniels needs to get put in for Georgia. I think they're done with JT Daniels. I think they don't care. They're like, Stetson Bennett is better for what they want to do right now. And I think even if JT Daniels gets fully healthy, I don't think he's going to play for him. You guys agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one more thing on the receivers. I don't know if you guys saw it. I tweeted it out, a poll. You were bringing up all the Ohio State receivers. I was curious who you guys would rather have out of the two receiving cores, Bama's 2019 receiving core or Ohio State's receiving core this year with Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Marvin Harrison Jr., or Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, and Jalen Waddle.
I think this, Matthew, I'll let you go with it, but I think it's pretty easy.
Yeah. Well, I feel like me and Justin are going to disagree with this. I'm going Alabama on this one. Okay, good.
We're not.
Well, Justin definitely knew where I was going to go with this.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going Alabama. I don't want to talk a whole bunch about Henry Ruggs. Obviously, there's some character issues there. But I think it's going to be a long time before we see something that matches that. And as a result of that, as someone who doesn't even keep up with the draft, for 2 years back to back, it was like the first round was just loaded with Alabama wide receiving talent. So I can't imagine a better college receiving core than that.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartly agree. And we also forget the fact that, I mean, Devonta Smith had an incredible year last year, but Jaden Waddle was out the whole year. That receiving those two last year, I mean, Alabama may have won every game by 45 points. So I agree. I think the Alabama, those guys are top end guys. I do think Olave and Garrett Wilson will be very good. I especially think Garrett Wilson will. And like I said, if Olave finds the right spot, like I feel like if he went to New Orleans or if he went to the Patriots, he'd probably be the best receiver in the history of the world. And I hate Boston, so that sucks. But yeah, no, I think it's easy to take the Alabama receivers. But I will say it is at least a conversation. I think you can make points. You can make points for Ohio State.
I mostly tweeted it to challenge people's recency biases in the process of them all going for like 150 yards against Michigan State. I agree. It's Alabama though.
Yeah, and then they just couldn't catch the ball in the snow. And I'm not going to talk much about the Michigan-Ohio State game. Michigan dominated. I still think Jim Harbaugh is not a very good coach. I can't believe there are people out there that are like, oh, this is all Jim Harbaugh needed, like blah, 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 blah. I mean, plain and simple, I mean, you guys can tell me I'm wrong or from being a sore loser. If it doesn't snow, Ohio State wins that game by 21 plus points.
I agree, but it did snow.
It did snow. Yeah, exactly.
Jim Harbaugh had his team ready for snow, and Ryan Day didn't. So
yeah, no, and oddly enough, like Ohio State fans are in the realm of crazy SEC kind of fans a little bit. People were not happy with him after they lost. And so when Matt, earlier when you brought up the Chicago Bears, I think you brought up to me earlier this week in the text, it makes a lot of sense. But like I said, that's whatever. I don't know. But yeah, it doesn't snow. They win by 100 points, but whatever. So I guess, so I'll explain our Heisman thing. So what we're going to do for the Heisman this year, Matt is going to find a tie, first of all. We are going to do either next, if you guys don't have a night available, that's fine. We can do it during the day like this. It's fine. But here in the next like 2-3 minutes, I'll start with one of you guys, and we're all going to pick one guy for the Heisman who we think should win the Heisman. And like I said, I'm going to let you two go first, and I'll figure out a way how to do it, dally it up between you two, but whatever. You'll have 5 minutes to explain why that person should win the Heisman. And I'm not saying you have to go outside of the box, but I'm going to be going outside of the box. And also outside of that, I don't want to hear Will Anderson. So please don't say Will Anderson. Andy Staples, who I really, really like, was like trying to tout up Will Anderson as a Heisman winner. I just don't think he's going to be great in the NFL. I just don't think he deserves to be on the Heisman ballot. That's just my opinion. If you want to take Will Anderson, fine, do it. But
I don't think anyone does this year, but
so who's winning in the pick'em?
Not me.
All right, so Matt, you're last. So you get to pick your Heisman guy first. Who are you gonna rally around for the Heisman?
I guess I'll rally around Kenneth Walker. I still think he's been the best player. So,
all right, Matthew.
I was gonna take Kenneth. Justin, I wasn't gonna do it. I wasn't gonna take Will Anderson, but Matt leaves me no choice.
Okay. That's fine. And then Matthew, you said Will Anderson. Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, take CJ Stroud.
Oh no, you guys really thought I was going to take CJ Stroud? How many times have I come on this podcast and said I want him benched because he doesn't run the ball? And let me just say, when he did run the ball versus Michigan, granted it was called back, he scored. Fucking idiot. No, I am going to go with my boy Kenny Pickett. So okay. I will be speaking for Kenny Pickett. And then also along with that, next week, we'll obviously talk a little bit about – I think we're going to do awards next week solely, just awards. And we'll do – I think I listed them all in there. We'll do all those, and we'll kind of go through all those. And then maybe the week after that, once all the bowls are fully settled in, then we'll go through all the bowls and do that. I just think it's a nice break to have next week. We just do the awards, and then we finally get our stuff together. And the week after that, we look at all the bowls, all the playoffs, and we figure out a schedule going forward with that. You guys cool with that?
Yep.
All right, sweet. So we got our three. But as much as we've been talking about the coaching carousel and the transfer portal, there are still 10 championship games this weekend, and there are a lot of important ones. So let's just get into the championship games. You guys don't have to give your predictions or what side you're going to pick on the championship games. Whatever, it doesn't matter. We'll go through our picks last like we always do. But I'll start it out with this one. Excuse me. God, I shouldn't drink that Red Bull so fast. That's gas. Which conference championship game are you most looking forward to? Matt, I'll start with you.
Most looking forward to Georgia, Alabama. It might be basic, but I think I want to really see if Nick Saban can get probably the first time ever less talented team to beat Georgia.
Okay. Matthew?
Yeah, I'm split. I'm really hot on Georgia, Bama as well, but I really like the matchup of Oklahoma State and Baylor too.
Yeah, I like Oklahoma State and Baylor a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you, and Matthew, you kind of said it in the text. The SEC championship game not being at like 7 or 8 o'clock for a guy who's from the North in the Midwest, like it takes a ton of luster out of it for me. Like, granted, it's going to be indoors, so it won't really matter, but it does take some of the luster out of it. But I am still super pumped about that. Because I do think if Nick Saban can pull off and beat Georgia this year, and I don't think he'll do it easily. I don't think he'll win even. But if he were somehow to do it like, I don't know, like 24-7 or something like that, where it was pretty much dominant, that might like be the biggest win, one of the biggest wins of his college career or his coaching career, just because, I mean, I can't believe the line's only at what did I have it as?
6.5, I think.
Yeah, 6.5.
Yeah, I didn't even put the spread on this one. My bad. I didn't put the spread on the last two. My bad. But yeah, so I'm surprised that that's like it's that low. I mean, Georgia, whatever. Other than Clemson, they've just destroyed everyone. But all right, yeah. Let's get into some of the conference championships. I'll go through our pick'em standings, which are, if we could have started at the beginning of the season and been like, how do we want it to end so it's the most fun? It is exactly what it is right now. I think we are all separated by either a game or half a game. I am still in first after a terrible weekend last week. Thank God I pushed. I am 24, and 2. Matthew, you are in second at 24, 25 and 1. And Matt, you are just a full game behind me at 24 and 26. How have you not gotten a push? I also would like to say, hold on. And I know I said it in the text, and it didn't really help our parlay, but Matt coming on and giving the Oklahoma State -3 or 3.5. You couldn't find that line anywhere past like Monday afternoon.
I have the bet slip to prove it.
So yes, you got lucky. But yeah, so it's been crazy, and I got to tell you guys, I think I know like some of how the games are going to go this weekend, but I'm going to be completely wrong. So, and that's what has made this season so fun so far. So let's just get into it. Let's do the 2 ones that are today, I believe. And let's start with kind of an interesting one, in my opinion, at least. UTSA versus Western Kentucky for the Conference USA Championship. It's being played in the Alamo Dome in Texas, so I assume it's a home game for UTSA. UTSA 11-0 before last week, finally lost to North Texas. In my opinion, I think UTSA is a bit overrated, and that I think the country thinks that as well, considering that Western Kentucky is giving them 3.5 points, or not giving them. Western Kentucky is favored by 3.5. What are your guys' thoughts on this one? Matt, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I was a little shocked by the line, but I agree they're definitely an overrated team. Western Kentucky's offense should put up a lot of points. Should be a pretty high-scoring game. But yeah, I was definitely shocked by the line. I thought it would have been more of like a pick'em in this one, but should be an interesting game for sure.
What about you, Matthew?
Yeah, personally, I don't have a ton of exposure to these teams, but in all the conversations I've had with people who do, it seems like this one's going to go Western Kentucky's way. So I would take them -3.5. That's what I'm doing for our picks this week. I'm making a pick on all 10 games.
I think we all
are. With Western Kentucky. I was born in Kentucky, so it makes sense that I go with it. Yeah,
that's awesome. I lived in Kentucky for a year. But yeah, I do think. And Matt, what do you mean you haven't been following Western Kentucky and UTSA all year? There's super power programs. No, I'm kidding. I agree with both of you. I am a little bit scared that the public is so on Western Kentucky. Like I did it for my other side. I did a preview. I think something like 70% of the money is on Western Kentucky, and that never makes me feel good. But I don't see how Western Kentucky doesn't win this game. Their offense is very, very good. Bailey Zapp is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NCAA. I bet with Western Kentucky twice this year. I'm 1-1 on them. But I agree this will be one of my picks. I'm not going to explain my pick, but if I were to take a side, I would take Western Kentucky. And what was the over-under? The over-under 72.5, that's a lot of points, so I don't know if I'd touch that. That's a lot of points. And I just don't, like you said, Matt, you don't know about, like, I maybe know a little bit more, but that's it. Like that seems like a lot of points. So, all right. And let's head over to the nightcap, the Pac-12 championship game, rematch of Oregon and Utah. Utah pretty much dominated them when they played 2 weeks ago. It's 8:00 tonight in Allegiant Stadium in Vegas, which is pretty cool. I don't know if you guys have seen pictures of Allegiant or whatever. It's one of the stadiums I really want to go to and visit new. But Utah's favored by 2, and the over-under is 58. Matthew, we'll start with you on this one. How do you see, or what are your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, so it sounds like you already know. I picked Oregon. I have them +2, so I'm essentially picking them to win outright, most likely. Personally, they've got too many resources. They've got too much at their disposal to let this game go the same way twice. I think they know what they did wrong, and they've got enough people over there to look at it and figure it out. Whereas Utah, I don't know what you do after you win a game that heavily. You go back and you say, what are we going to do different? The answer is probably, well, not much. So I think Oregon comes into this game just more prepared with a little bit more fire. And, I'm still not going to be shocked if Utah wins. I'd be an idiot to be shocked if they did. But I am going to side with Oregon on this one.
I feel that. Matt, how are you feeling about this game?
Not confident for starters, because last time I picked Oregon and that game was not even close.
No,
by halftime it was over. It was over by halftime. So yeah, but I'm sticking with my guns. Last time I picked Oregon, I'm doubling down. I think they got to get a grudge match here.
Well, question mark.
Tie up the
so
series.
you've now bet on. You're saying you're going to bet on Oregon this week, and then 2 weeks ago. Why did you take Oregon State last week?
I learned my lesson last week. I don't know. All right.
Hey, no.
Oregon State always plays them tough, and the one time I bet against Oregon,
I'm not criticizing. I looked at that game too, and luckily I stayed away from it. But I was like, yeah, this is. Corvallis. Like this is Oklahoma State, or this is Oregon State.
Can't bet on them. Can't bet against them.
So yeah. It should be a good one though tonight. I hope. Well, honestly, I just hope it is a good game. I obviously will take a side. But I just want to see a good game tonight. I want to see good games all weekend. That's my opinion. But all right, let's switch over to Saturday with our 7 more. I'm just going to go right down the list. All right, we got our Mountain West Championship game, Utah State versus San Diego State. It's in California. I can't remember the stadium's called. I don't think it's either one of their stadiums. I'm pretty sure it's neutral. It'll be played at 3 o'clock on Fox. San Diego State, I believe, is 24th in the country right now, and they are favored by 6, and the over-under is 50. I started with Matthew last time. Matt, let's start with you. How are you feeling?
I'm actually pretty excited about this game. I think Utah State is pretty underrated. I think it's going to be a really close game, and I don't want to expose my pick, but I think Utah State will keep it within the spread.
Okay. What about you, Matthew?
I've got San Diego State to cover. Like I said, I was born in Kentucky. Part of that means that I love basketball schools. So I'm feeling pretty good about this pick.
San Diego State, yeah. Who am I thinking of? I was thinking of Anthony Bennett. He went to UNLV. Never mind. Yeah, I think this game could be I'm a little bit surprised at the over-unders only 50. San Diego State, from what I've seen, they can score pretty easily. So if I was going to take a side, and I will here in a little bit, but I'd probably take the over. But if I had to pick a team too, I probably also would pick San Diego State. I just think they're more of a balanced team. And in California, even if it's not in San Diego, they're going to get fans there. So I like the over a lot, and I'd probably take San Diego State if I was going to take a side. All right. The next one, the Sun Belt Championship, App State at Louisiana. So, oh my God. What's his name?
Billy Napier?
Billy Napier. Okay, yes. So Billy Napier is – I was like, we just talked about him. Why can't I think of his name? Billy Napier probably – has he said if he's going to coach in the bowl game? I wouldn't think so. He is going to coach in the bowl game.
I think so, yeah. I think
okay, cool. Okay, cool. So they're at home tonight playing host to Appalachian State, who is a good program. I was shocked by the line, and granted, these are all smaller conferences, so I don't have like the full background of what's going on in these conferences. So I shouldn't be surprised, but I am. App State is favored by 3, and the over-under is 53. This game will be at 3:30 on ESPN. Matthew, how do you feel about this one?
For me, this was a pretty easy pick to make. As soon as Billy Napier got hired to Florida, I kind of did a deep dive on the program. It's got 3 straight 10-win seasons. It's the 3rd year straight that they've been in the Sun Belt Championship. So I was surprised to see that they were an underdog in this game as well. But part of the territory here is I just have to be a Billy Napier fan, which means that I'm getting behind him. I've got Louisiana +3.
I was going to say, if you're not taking Billy Napier here, man, it's not. You may have said all the right things about 15 minutes ago about him, but you clearly don't believe in him. What about you, Matt? You seem to have your finger on these smaller conferences, and I think me and Matthew do.
I love Group of Five, so yeah, I'm all over Lafayette. They haven't lost since week 1. I'm not betting on that streak ending. Granted, it's a bad loss to lose to Texas, but they haven't lost since then, and I'm going to keep rolling with them. So
awesome. Yeah, while I'm looking at this one, like I said, I'm surprised it's App State -3. I'm not going to touch the over/under just because, like I said, I don't have my finger on the pulse of these conferences. I could look up how many points they score a game, but really, when I bet overs unders, I like to see the team actually play before I make a bet. So I would also stick Louisiana. I'm shocked they're at home with a great coach and they haven't lost since week 1, and they're underdogs on the road. I think Billy Napier plays that up. I think they get to. They've only lost 1 game. Are they going to get to the New Year's Six Bowl if they win?
I'm not sure if Sunbelt gets one. I don't think so.
Well, I was thinking because other than Cincinnati and Notre Dame, BYU is ranked ahead of them, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I think BYU would be that next non-power 5 that gets in New Year's Six. But there's a chance they could be playing in a New Year's Six Bowl. And either way, if they don't, they're going to be playing against – if they win, they're going to be playing against a good team. And it'll be a good way to send Billy Napier off. And like I said, he seems like a good guy doing the right thing and just sticking around for his dude. So I am also all over Louisiana. Like I said, at home, I think college football and college basketball playing at home is not only just the fans, but the familiarity you have with your surroundings when you're playing at home. I think it means a lot to players, and I think it helps them a lot. So I once again, like I said, like you guys, I'm all over Louisiana. Next, we have the MAC championship game between Northern Illinois and Kent State. This game will be played in Detroit at Ford Field like it is every year. They used to do it. They used to do the MAC championship on Friday night. They're doing it tomorrow at noon instead. I loved watching it on Friday nights. Kent State is one of the best offenses in the country. They have a semi-legit pro prospect in quarterback Dustin Crum. I'm obviously all over Kent State. I like Kent State. I think Sean Lewis, the coach there, he's only, I believe, 30 or 31 years old. And since taking over that program, I think this is his second. I think this is in 4 years. It's his second time in the MAC championship. So he's done wonders there. I love Kent State. Both of my parents are driving up to Detroit right now to watch the game tomorrow. So we're obviously all in on a family, but I like Kent State, and I'm going to tell you right now that 74.5 seems high. I think I'm going to take the over on it. Matthew, we'll start with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, for a good while now, I've used Kent State kind of as my placeholder when I just need to reference like a random bad program. And I've had to get out of that habit because they've actually become a decent program. As much as I know a MAC, similar to you, I'm going to take the over here. It's high. Whenever the over's high, I still end up taking it. I did it on the Red River Shootout this year. Went my way.
Let's not talk about the Red River Shootout and how bad of a loss that was for me. I don't want to talk about that.
So, but yes, I if it's a high over, with the exception of, I guess, what we were talking about maybe 90 seconds ago. If the total's pretty high, I'm still probably going to take the over anyways.
Yeah, and Kent State, I believe, is 8th in the nation in total offense, and then like 129th in total defense. So they have no defense, but they have a lot of offense. So there is going to be a lot of scoring. Matt, what are your thoughts on the game?
I was a little surprised by the line because I know Kent State is a good program. There's no doubt. I think NIU, every few years, it seems like they have one of these real good seasons. So I'm going to roll with them this game, and I think they will possibly upset them straight up. But I'm definitely taking the 3.5.
That's a smart pick. I believe in the last 3 MAC championships, the underdog has won straight up 3 times in a row. So it's definitely it's a conference championship game where you have two like teams that basically come in and then there's a line set. But I feel like they have no idea what the line should be, so they just set it at something and they let the game play out. So it should be a very exciting game tomorrow. If you ever wake up at noon and want to turn on some offensive football, it'll be on ESPN. All right, now let's get back to we'll start with I'll skip around real quick. Let's go to the AAC. Houston at Cincinnati, which in my opinion is huge that they're playing that game in Cincinnati at Nippert. Should be a packed house there. They are favored by 10.5 over Houston, who's coached by Dana Holgorsen, who's a pretty good coach. They're favored by 10.5. Kickoff is at 4 o'clock on ABC. Matt, I'll start with you this time. What are you looking at with the AAC championship?
Yeah, I think Houston is actually going to play them pretty tough. I think they're getting overlooked. They're another team that hasn't lost since week 1. They're on a heater right now, and I think that they can definitely keep it within a touchdown against Cincinnati.
All right, Matthew, what's up?
Yeah, I'm going to mirror that sentiment. I still see Cincinnati winning, but I am going to have Houston covering in this game. I'm taking Houston plus 10.5. I sent that pick to you guys just before we started the show, and I feel really good about it, to be honest.
Okay. I'm going to be the odd man out. I'm going to take Cincinnati at home. I think they cover. I think it's been a big help to that program this week and this kind of goes back to Luke Fickell as just being a good coach and a good guy. It's really helped him that the fact that Luke Fickell hasn't been really yet, at least, caught up in any of this coaching talk, really. Like, I think his name was mentioned for Notre Dame. I think Oklahoma's waiting to interview him until after this Saturday. And like, I think playing at home in like a smaller conference like this, and even though it's the AAC, it's big. I do think it's going to be close for 95, 90% of the game. I just think Cincinnati gets like a late field goal or a late touchdown that sets it over so they cover the spread. Houston's very good. Dana Holgorsen's done a very good job there. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he moves somewhere. But I will take Cincinnati and the points, or not and the points, minus 10.5. But yeah. All right. So, all right, now back to the big boys. Let's start with the worst of the big boys. Let's go with the ACC championship. Pitt versus Wake in Charlotte, 8 o'clock p.m. on ABC. I know I said it's Pitt versus Wake. However, I am incredibly excited for this game, oddly enough. So, Matthew, let's start with you, man.
Yeah, if you guys looked at my picks, I don't know the spread on this game off the top of my head. I just wrote down Pitt minus 1,000. I feel very good that they're just, first of all, absolutely going to tear up this Wake Forest defense. Granted, that will probably happen in the – what's that word I'm looking for? Can't remember. In the inverse direction. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. We've got two not great defenses, two pretty good offenses, but I think Pitt is going to be able to put up points faster than Wake Forest can even blink in this one.
All right, Matt, what about you, man?
Yeah, I have Wake Forest plus the 3.5. I just think it's going to be definitely a high-scoring, high-flying offenses. I mean, yeah, it'll go back and forth. The one thing worries me is Pitt. I didn't realize how good their pass rush was, but they are like tied. They like have been trading back and forth, flipping back and forth with Oklahoma State, I believe it was. I read just before the pod, in the lead in the nation for sacks. But I think if they can get a lot of quick plays to their receivers, Wake Forest, they'll be fine. They'll still score a lot of points. I think they'll be able to beat them.
So before I get into my pick for this one, I implore both of you to go on ESPN and pull up Oklahoma State's team page and go to statistics, and they have that whole defensive category. Like usually you see like, interceptions from the defensive backs, sacks from the linemen and linebackers. If you look at that across the board, their defensive stats, it is nothing like that. Everyone's making interceptions. Everyone's getting a sack. It's crazy. Their defense is so versatile. But we'll get to that in a minute. Matthew, did you make a pick on this one? No, I didn't think you did.
Yeah.
Oh, you did. You did. You had a pick. It is Pitt minus 3. Or that's what I had last night. It wouldn't surprise me if it moves before game time. I 100% agree with you, Matthew. I think Kenny Pickett didn't come back again and do all this to not win the ACC championship. I think he puts the team on his back. I actually think he has an actual Heisman stating case on Saturday night. Will it win him the Heisman? No. But he will have a good game. And I'm also just not betting on Wake Forest after they lost to North Carolina. That was my game of the year where I picked Wake Forest, and they absolutely failed. And I don't even want to talk about North Carolina, but North Carolina last week being up by 10 points with 2 minutes left and somehow finding a way to lose that game, unbelievable. Unreal. But, yeah, that was just my thoughts. All right.
How about the preseason odds of picking Pitt to win the ACC championship?
Wait, what did you say?
Clemson, I said, how about the preseason odds of picking Pitt to win the ACC championship?
What was it?
Well, I don't know. I'm asking, what do you think you could have made on that? Back when Clemson and North Carolina were contenders, and
I'm looking right now.
Where I thought it would be, yeah.
It's gonna be hard to find. I'll find that at some point. I just gotta go all the way back. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Here. I think I might have found it. Hopefully. But I'll comment. I'll look at it in a second. I'll comment on it. Like I said, I think Pitt wins. Like I said, I love Kenny Pickett. I love Pitt. So here, hold on. All right. So these were your odds preseason to win the ACC. Obviously, Clemson was first. What do you think they were at?
Probably like minus 700, 800, something stupid.
You're very close, Matt. Minus 900 to win the conference. That didn't happen. So they were minus 900. North Carolina plus 700 would have been a good pick. I mean, if I was going to give out an ACC pick at the beginning of the year, I would have said North Carolina plus 700. Easy money. Miami plus 800. NC State plus 1,800. Louisville plus 2,200. Virginia Tech plus 2,500, Florida State plus 3,500, Virginia 3,500, Pitt plus 4,000. So yeah, you could have made some money. The only other three below them, who's below them? All right, you got Boston College next plus 6,600, Georgia Tech plus 6,600, and then Wake Forest plus 8,000. So, yes, it is very clear that maybe in the ACC, I don't know if it'll happen again soon, but the next time that we see like Clemson lose an early season game, and maybe they're not going to be as good as we think they are, we just as a group need to throw some money on some random team, because it seems like when Clemson's not winning the ACC, it's up for grabs. So, but yeah, that's crazy. Syracuse plus 1,000 or 10,000, and then Duke plus 10,000. I'm surprised Duke wasn't at plus 1 million. But that's interesting. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I'm happy you brought that up, Matthew. That's great. All right. So let's move on to what's next. Big 12 championship. Baylor, Oklahoma State at Jerry's World in Texas. Another noon kick. I will be tuning in for sure. Oklahoma State minus 5.5, over under 46.5, which stinks because I love that number of 46.5 as an over under for them. And I won't be able to pick between it. But Matthew, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I love this matchup stylistically. I love watching defenses go at it. That's why week one, Georgia Clemson was even probably one of my favorite games of the year. I love games that roll that way. And in this one, what I'm looking forward to, and I brought this up even when we were previewing Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, that I thought Oklahoma State was probably the most comparable defense right now that we have to Georgia. The aggression that we see out of them, the way that they can physically shake other offenses. And I'm not sure, actually, I'm not going to say I'm not sure. I know for a fact that the Baylor offense can't handle that. It's just a matter of can Baylor return fire when they get their turn on defense. So it's going to be an exciting game. I'm leaning Oklahoma State, but I could really go either way.
Okay. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, the more I think about it, I might even have to change my pick for most excited. I'm absolutely ecstatic for this game. I think it's going to be an awesome game. Same ballpark as you, Matthew. I think both defenses are going to be all over it. They're going to be on their game. I think Baylor will keep it within a field goal. I think it'll be a really close game. So I have Baylor plus the 5.5. But I could see it going either way.
All right. Yeah, this is a tough one for me because I agree with you wholeheartedly, Matthew, that them and Wisconsin in a way were kind of the most comparable defenses to Georgia. I mean, clearly they aren't as good in athletic, but Georgia's been so good on defense this year that it's just them on their own tier of like a billion galaxies away. And then you have teams like Oklahoma State and Wisconsin, the good defensive teams. But last week it turned into a shootout. And I know Bedlam always does that. And it may just be the nature of the rivalry. But I am not as confident in as much in their defense. And I do think Dave Aranda has done a great job at Baylor. I'm pretty surprised he hasn't been in a lot of talk surrounding the coaches. I think he's, other than Marcus Freeman, I mean, he's one of the best young coaches out there. I like Baylor in the points too. I think it's going to be a good game, but I like Baylor in the points. So, yeah, all right. I like that we're all kind of picking different things all around. So that's good. And then it'll make the picks.
Be a window for me to catapult to the lead here this week.
Yeah. Keep telling yourself that. When you start out 0-4 tomorrow, I'll be sure to text the group.
Sounds good.
Or if you start 0-4, it's likely then I started 0-4, and then we'll have another Saturday where I'm too depressed to return either one of your texts, just like last Saturday. You guys were like talking to each other on it, and I was just like, I have nothing to say. I've been so angry. I just kept seeing like Jim Harbaugh on the screen. I was like, God, get him off. I hate Jim Harbaugh. All right. Big 12. Let's go the Big 10 championship. Michigan versus Iowa in Indianapolis. I believe this is the first time it hasn't been Ohio State since 2015 or 2016 when I think they lost to Michigan State when they went to the playoff. And this would also be then Iowa's first time they made the Big Ten final since then as well, because Michigan State beat Iowa on I don't know if you guys remember, it was like a 12-minute drive in the fourth quarter that they just ran the ball every play, and it was the most brutal way to lose. They were just picking up 4 yards every carry, and there was nothing Iowa could do about it. It was sad. But they're going up against Michigan. Michigan's favored by 10.5, and the over/under is 43.5. Another number that I hate. So I love doing over/unders. I probably won't be touching it in this one. Like I said, Michigan favored by 10.5. I'll start with you, Matthew. What are you looking at here?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people are probably going to have Michigan to win this game, but I do as well. But I'm actually picking Iowa to cover here plus 10.5. I see this, first of all, as maybe a little bit of a letdown week for Michigan. And I hate using little things like that because they're kind of intangible and everybody wants to talk about them and they never really come to fruition. But I do see this as probably a letdown week a little bit for Michigan. And I would have liked to see how we would have picked this game like in week 5 of the season, back when Iowa was like our number 3 team in the nation. Obviously, we have a lot more information now than we do then. But I have a feeling we're going to see an outcome here that may disappoint this modern idea that we have of Michigan. But had we seen it maybe a month ago, we would have gone, hey, great win for Michigan. And that's what I'm predicting. A win for Michigan, but I think Iowa covers. Or Iowa plus the points.
Yep. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit different direction here. I don't even know if Iowa scores until possibly the fourth quarter. I mean, their offense has been abysmal. I mean, I think it's possible you see them score late garbage time scores, but I think Michigan probably wins. I don't know what the over-under is. I probably should take the under.
43.5.
Okay, yeah, I like that under too, but I could see this game being like 23-7 or something.
All right, I'm happy that you guys both split because that makes me a little bit happier about picking Iowa. It's obviously kind of a grudge pick. Like I said, I just don't think Michigan is that good. I really don't. And like I said, it snowed and it happened. It doesn't snow. Ohio State wins that game pretty easily. Hassan Haskins was an animal versus Ohio State, 5 touchdowns. But going forward, they really need Blake Corum back. Like, they need the 1-2 punch of both of those guys. And I know, and in the beginning of the season, Blake Corum was the more like featured back, kind of. So, and the only reason I'm picking Iowa really is because I really do think Kirk Ferentz is just going to give some kind of motivation or speech before the game where they keep it under 10 points. I agree. I think Michigan probably ekes out a win. I would love it if they lost, but I think Iowa covers. I do. And Matt, you are Matt, you are 100% right. Their offense, it might be worse than Akron's. If we just always bring up Akron, so it might be worse than Akron's. I mean, when they were ranked in the top 3-4 teams in the country, 40% of their points were coming from the defense. So yeah. I am also very worried that Michigan is going to come out and like on Iowa's first drive, they're going to like sack, tackle for loss, sack, punt out of the end zone. So, but the Big Ten championship game has been weird. It was weird last year. Northwestern dominated the first half versus Ohio State last year. So I think we could see a really close first half, like even Iowa leading going into the break. But I think Michigan then pulls away at the end. But I do look Iowa plus 10.5. And once again, that number 43.5, I'm not going to touch it. Jesus. Make me a better over under. All right. Now to the big one of them all, the SEC championship. Georgia versus Alabama at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, 4 p.m. on CBS. It should be a night game, in my opinion, but whatever. Matthew, you're our SEC guy. I think I know how all of us are leaning, but why don't you start it off for us, Matthew?
I'm dying to talk about this one. I can't even sit
talk as much as you want. we're over an hour and a half, so just let it all fly.
I've got one matchup on both sides of the ball that I want to talk about for both of these teams. The first, I'll talk about what Alabama has struggled against defensively, which has been teams that can throw to their running backs out of the backfield and teams that utilize the tight end a lot. It hurt them a lot when they played Ole Miss last year. It hurt them a lot when they played Texas A&M this year. Historically, that's what we've seen Alabama struggle against. And that's something that Georgia, I'm sure as soon as I started talking about that, you guys immediately thought of Georgia. They've got that freshman tight end, Brock Bowers, who's been absolutely insane. Yeah. I think he's going to be an absolute problem for Alabama. That being said, I think what probably the story of this game really is Georgia's defense versus Alabama's offense. And one thing, you can look at it as an advantage or a disadvantage depending on which team you're a fan of. But Alabama has not really established a great run game this year. I believe Robinson, I don't even think he's healthy, Brian Robinson.
No, yeah, I was going to ask you. He's been not healthy all week. I've seen tickers in the bottom of ESPN. Do you have any idea if he's playing?
So I don't believe he's playing. And then the back behind him is playing, but he was like in a car accident not very long ago. And he's not even like fully healthy, but they've got nobody else. And so while that is obviously a detractor, one way in a weird sense that it kind of works Alabama's way is Georgia's going to shut down the run game. But because of the way the season has gone, Alabama has had to learn how to put up points on the board and win games without really relying on the run game and without setting that out ahead of them. So that could potentially help out their offense a little bit. But I think this is going to get ugly. I have Georgia minus 6.5. If I were to throw you a final score prediction, I honestly don't think Georgia's going to put up a ton of points either. I see this game maybe like 17-7, right around there. Maybe 17-10.
Come on, man. I at least get our hopes up for a lot of scoring or something. No, I'm just kidding. No, it should be a defensive battle, I think. I agree with you. You said you're going to take Georgia 6.5. I like that pick. And you're clearly the SEC. So basically, we've split into three things. I just basically host the show. Matthew is our SEC insider, and then Matt is our non-Power 5 insider. So there we go. But Matt,
and you got Ohio State and Akron.
Well, let's switch out Ohio State. Let's put Kent and Akron. That's me. Matt, how are you feeling about this one?
Yeah. So I don't know why, but I feel like I've seen a lot of people saying like, oh, Georgia's doesn't really need the game because they're going to make it either way with a loss. I think Kirby Smart is going to pitch to the team like, we beat them now. We don't have to see them again. We don't have to see Alabama. They're not going to make the playoff. We beat them and knock them off. Gives them their second loss. So I think Georgia is going to just blow them out of the water personally. I think they're just way more talented. And like Matthew said, I think Brock Bowser is going to be a problem for Alabama. I think Georgia probably wins. The final score, I'd probably have to say, I think Alabama will score a little bit more than 7 points. I think maybe probably 31-17, maybe something like that. But yeah, I'm all over Georgia in this one.
All right. Yeah, when I said I think we are leaning the same way, I agree. I think we're all leaning towards Georgia. Does make me a little bit worried because there have only been, you can probably count them on one hand, games that Nick Saban has gone in as an underdog, which makes that scary because he's not often in that position. And it means that they might come out with something. But more than anything, I think Georgia on both sides of the ball is clearly the best team in the country. And I think Kirby Smart is looking at this. And he is like, I kind of agree with you, Matt. He's going to look at his players, be like, we need to beat them now. This is not their year. This is our year. We are going to destroy them. And then, yes, you're right. They don't have to play later. So I would also go with, if I was picking a side, I would take Georgia. I won't be taking a side. I might take something else with my pick, but we'll tease that later. Yeah, I think Georgia. I agree. I think it's going to be a low scoring game, which, you know what, I agree. It's fine. It's fine. I mean, the Clemson Georgia game was a little bit boring, but looking back on it, it was awesome. It's one of those games where you're like, wow, this, like, the next Monday, you're like, oh, this sucked. But then like 10 or 2 months on the road, you're like, wow, I really wish I would have paid attention more to that game because it was just incredible. But yeah, I would take Georgia -6. I have them at -6 on here. Like I said, I'm not going to take a side, but yeah, that's the SEC. And I believe that is all of them, correct? We covered them all.
Yeah.
All right. Instead of going into picks right now, let's do it. Let's do our muff the punt. Who is going to muff the punt this weekend and who is going to come out of Saturday or Friday as the biggest winner of them all? I'll start with you, Matt.
All right. So it might be a little biased because this is what I'm hoping for, but I'm going to say Mike Gundy muffs the punt for Oklahoma State. And I think the big winner will be Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. They'll sneak into the playoffs as the 4 seed and throw it right in Brian Kelly's face.
Okay, so Matthew, I'll get to you in a second, but so do you think they're going to take into effect the fact that Brian Kelly's gone?
I think they would, but I don't see a way where they can put in a 2-loss Alabama who's struggled with multiple teams this year. And no offense to Matthew's team, but they barely beat a Florida team who's now 6-6 on the year. Like they struggled with Arkansas, they struggled with Auburn last week. That's another 6-6 team. I mean, they have not been the normal Alabama team we've seen. I don't think they can put a 2-loss Alabama team in this year, and I don't see Oklahoma State being in the 2 losses. So,
I'm happy you said that because I'm fully on with that. Because I think in years past, they would have looked at this Notre Dame thing and been like, "Oh, bro, Brian Kelly's gone. We can just X them out, and we have a perfect explanation of why they're not in." This year, there's not a very good chance. There's a chance tomorrow is absolute chaos. And if that happens, or if, like you said, Mike Gundy loses, or Michigan loses, I think Michigan losing just opens up the floodgates. I don't know what happens then, but I agree with you. I think they're going to have to be like, we can't just not put Notre Dame in. They've lost one game, and their only loss is to another playoff team. So yeah. I agree with you in that sense. What about you, Matthew?
I don't have one specific guy that I'm ready to talk about, but there are 2 guys who definitely have a lot to lose. And so I'm going to spread out my bet and put half on both of them. That way, when one of them does fall, I can say that I called it. I'm going to say Jim Harbaugh and Luke Fickell. Both of them are in situations where they cannot afford to lose a game. To be honest, Georgia's really the only team who can afford to lose and remain in the playoffs. But if Jim Harbaugh or Luke Fickell cannot pull it off this Saturday, it's going to be a long week.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you on that. I'm not as worried about Luke Fickell. I just am not. He clearly saw all the coaching things this week going on, and he made a point to stay out of it. So I think he's focused, and I think he is going to get his team. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to cover, and they will be in the right position on Sunday where they need to be to get into the playoff. Matt, I'm gonna disagree with you. I think Mike Gundy wins the weekend. I think they take away Baylor, even though I'm going to bet on Baylor to cover the spread. I think they handle Baylor, and there is nothing better for Oklahoma State and the rest of the Big 12 to be in possibly Oklahoma's final year in the conference. Just be like, you suck, screw you. We're going to get in the playoff over you, and just kind of do it right in Oklahoma's face. So I think Mike Gundy comes away with a huge winner. Granted, if they get to the playoffs, unless they play, I don't think they have a very good shot when they make the playoffs, but we'll see. That's a different story. And I think who muffs the weekend, it'll be the same guy that I picked last week. I think Jim Harbaugh does. Even if they win, I don't think they'll do it handily. And the more and more, if you guys can't tell, this is clearly, I'm talking myself into betting Iowa money line at 7:58 tomorrow. So just be ready for that, because it's probably going to happen for me. But I think Jim Harbaugh is going to muff the weekend, and I hope he does. Special shout out to Michigan. I will say they are wearing patches during the game to honor the school shootings in Michigan at Oxford. All right, so let's go to our picks. Everyone's going to have a little bit of a different card this week, I think. Did everyone pick at least something from every game?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I didn't look at your picks yet, Matthew, so I didn't know. It looked short, but whatever. A little different this week. We are very close, but the best way to do it when we're very close is just let unlimited picks fly in, and we'll see where it goes. But everyone should have at least 10 picks this year. If you want more, or this week, if you want more, feel free. Matt, I'm going to go ahead and start with you because you are in last place. So let's go. You're not in far last place. I want to point that out. We are all very, very close. And we are all very, very close at not being very good at betting. So that's fine.
All right.
Next.
So I have Oregon plus 2.5. I have Western Kentucky minus 3.5. I have Utah State plus 6.5. I have Lafayette plus 3. I have NIU plus 3.5. Wake Forest plus 3.5. Baylor plus 5.5. Houston plus 10.5. Michigan minus 10.5. Georgia minus 6.5. I went all spreads, and then I threw in a sweetener, the 11th pick for the week. USC is playing Cal. I got USC plus 4.5.
I was that's funny because I've also made a pick on the USC Cal game as well. What was your SEC? Sorry, I didn't get it.
Georgia minus 6.5.
And then what was USC, the spread?
Plus 4.5. I have that.
Yeah, USC plus 4.5. Okay. All right, so we got 11 picks from Matt. I'll read them off all at the end again, and we'll obviously be able to give our locks once we give out the parlay. But before we give out the lock, I am going to check at least my bookie that I have right now for the spreads, just so we give out a spread that people can actually bet on, not Oklahoma State minus 3. Matthew, another big. It's a big week for everybody. So go ahead, Matthew. Who you got?
All right. So Conference USA, I got Western Kentucky minus 3.5. Sun Belt, I've got Lafayette plus 3. The MAC championship, I just got it over 74.5. The Mountain West championship, I've got San Diego State minus 6. In the AAC, I've got Houston plus 10.5. Let me know if I need to slow down.
Yeah, you're good. Keep going.
In the Pac-12, I've got Oregon plus 2. In the Big 12, I've got Oklahoma State -5.5. In the Big 10, I've got Iowa +10.5. In the ACC, I've got Pitt. I can't remember the spread on that one because I wrote down
-3.
Oh, great. Yeah. Let me get all over that.
Yeah.
In the SEC, I've got Georgia -6.5. And then finally, I've got my 11th pick. I'm just flipping what Matt gave me. I'm going to take Cal -4.5.
Okay. Awesome, fellas. All right. So I just did mine, whatever random order. I got Iowa +10.5, Baylor +5.5, Cincinnati -10.5, Pitt -3, Kent State -3.5, SEC championship game under 49, Oregon +2. I'm also taking Western Kentucky -3.5. What other conference am I missing? Lafayette. I'm taking Lafayette at home. And then which one did I have? Lafayette, Mountain West, Utah State versus who are they playing? San Diego State.
Yep.
Yes. I got San Diego State -6, and then 11. I'm just going to be different. Cal, USC, under 58. All right. Are we all feeling good about our picks? I think Matt, I think picked every single underdog other than Georgia.
Almost.
Yeah.
Almost.
And then
Georgia and Michigan, I think.
So we're I gotta tell you, it's looking like a great weekend ahead of us, guys. It's gonna be awesome. Let's go around real quick. Let me get your locks. Matthew, I'll start with you.
Can I make my lock a pick that I actually don't even have? Is that allowed?
Yeah, of course.
I did not know that the total on Bama UGA was, you said 49.5?
49.
49? I love the under on that.
All right, cool.
I would take that in a second. And I'm going to go find somewhere where I can put a ridiculous amount of money on that too.
Yeah, no, as soon as you start talking about it, I looked at it and I was like, that's just the easiest one. Matt, who you got is your lock this week?
I don't know if you could do same game, different things, but I was going to put Georgia -6.5 as my lock. So
okay, that's fine. I believe you can. It depends on what bookie you use or what site.
Yeah.
But if you use any of like the popular sites, which I don't, they all let you to parlay that stuff. But UGA -6.5. Matt, you took me away. I was going to go with the under, but that's fine. You know what? I'm going to go with Lafayette +3. I think that it's a huge game for him. They're at home. And what I'm sure he wants to start out on a good foot with Florida. What better way to do that than get to a good bowl after winning your conference? So I'll go Lafayette +3. And then our Muffed Punt parlay will be SEC championship game under 49, UGA -6.5, and Lafayette +3. All right. I forgot. Of course, we won't see each other till probably next Friday or whenever we decide to do the awards. We won't see each other on Sunday. I'm sure we'll be talking tomorrow and Sunday. We need I need Final Four predictions and seedings right now. If you need a second to think about it, that's fine. I'll just go ahead and start. Sorry, I gotta write all this stuff down. I got Georgia at 1. I think they handled business with Alabama, not easily necessarily, but it's not going to be tough. So I got UGA at number 1. I'll put Michigan at 2, even though I really don't want it to be Michigan. I think that they'll end up 2. I do think they'll end up beating Iowa, even though Iowa will cover. 3, a little bit of a surprise, I think, to most people. I will have Cincinnati at 3. They are undefeated. They're other than Georgia. They had some games where they didn't look dominant, but they're undefeated, and they're undefeated for a reason. And they came in, and I just don't – I don't think the committee wants to make – well, I have no idea what the committee's doing. I just hope if Cincinnati makes it, they don't play Georgia in the first round, because that might be a bloodbath. But then 4, I'm going to go chalk just because I'm going to go chalk just because it's going to take me 15 minutes to actually understand what happens if chaos does happen. So I'm just going to do the easy thing and take Oklahoma State as the 4th. I think 5th will be Notre Dame, and I think 6th will be Bama. All right. Matthew, let's start with you.
Honestly, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly where I'm going, and I'm happy about it because it means, first of all, that we get to see Georgia and Oklahoma State in the first round of the playoffs, which I'd love to see both of those defenses go at it. Beyond that, Michigan, Cincy, I think that's actually a winnable game for Cincy. And then suddenly our national championship could be a rematch of last year's. I can't remember what bowl it was, but
pretty sure it was the Sugar Bowl. Yeah,
it was Georgia-Cincinnati in a bowl game, and I wouldn't believe you if you told me a year later that'd be the national championship. But that very well could happen if Sunday goes the way Saturday goes the way I'm talking about.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it would just take me a very long time to figure out seedings if chaos does happen this week. So I'm just going with chalk. Matt, what about you, my man?
Yeah, that one comment about that game, though, that Cincinnati-Georgia game, honestly, Cincinnati probably should have beat them. They lost their left tackle in I want to say the first half, or it was early second half maybe.
You are right. I believe also a lot of Georgia players did sit out, though.
Yeah. But, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up.
I got you. Yeah, it was a good game last year.
Yeah, it was a really good game. But, yeah, I have 1 Georgia, 2 Michigan, and 3 Cincinnati. But I think Baylor is going to pull off the upset. I think Bama is going to drop to Georgia, and I think Notre Dame slides in. So I got Notre Dame 4, I got Bama 5, and I probably would say Ohio State will probably jump Oklahoma State if Oklahoma State loses. So I'd probably say Ohio State 6.
I will say that does look so funny when, like, if that does happen, it would be, and even if Notre Dame doesn't win and it is Oklahoma State in there, just to look at that like screen almost and just see the top 4, and then everyone needs to take a picture of it. Yeah, everyone needs to take a picture of it. 5 and 6 Ohio State, because it's never happening again, ever in the history of college football. It will never happen again. Where both of them just missed the playoffs. I feel like in the 12 team, if it goes forward, they'll find a way to get them in. And even if they do 4 team for the next 5 years, they'll try and find a way to get one of those 2 teams in. All right. Yeah. Matt, I will say, as a podcast, I think we're cheering for you. I would love to see Notre Dame win. I'd love to see him in. I know you would be excited, and I agree. It would be the funniest thing ever if Brian Kelly is like, oh, I don't want to follow standards, and I've kind of hit the ceiling in Notre Dame, and the week after he leaves, Notre Dame makes the playoff again. Yeah. So that would just be ultimate irony. That's it for today. I do want to ask you guys one question. Random, it's not on the outline. And this can kind of serve as our trivia question, but it's an opinion question. I was watching an ESPN 150 earlier this morning while typing some stuff up. Who is the best walk-on in the history of college football? I'll go ahead and start. I think it's fairly easy. And even though I don't like him a lot right now because he stinks right now and he's hurt, I think it's Baker Mayfield. Not only did he walk on at Texas Tech and win the starting job right away, he then transferred, walked on at Oklahoma, and got the starting job right away. So, in my opinion, he won a Heisman Trophy as well. It's him. There are a couple other ones that are interesting. I'll throw them out there for you. Maybe I'll spark some names for you guys. J.J. Watt was a walk-on. He was kind of a weird walk-on because he had scholarship offers to other D1 schools, but walked on at Wisconsin. Ziggy Ansah is definitely one of the best walk-ons ever. He came over from Ghana, tried out for BYU's basketball team, didn't make it. They sent him to the football coach who he had never played football in his life, and he ended up being a first-round pick and did a lot for the BYU. But like I said, I'm going with Baker Mayfield.
I have one. I had to look up some names, but I'm gonna take a weird name here. It's gonna be Hunter Renfrow.
Okay.
Made the biggest play in the national championship game. I mean, just a little bit one out of left field,
Yeah, no, and it's I believe he caught the pass from Deshaun Watson to win it. Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest play. I would say probably the biggest play in Clemson history because it kind of started their run of dominance. Because I do think Clemson will be back next year. I think they'll be just fine. But yeah, one of the biggest plays made by. And I always hate these guys, these 5'9" receivers that Hunter Renfrow is not very fast. He's just has really good route running and is really good at catching the ball. And then I just feel bad about myself that I didn't do that, but whatever. Matthew, how about you, man?
I mean, I agree that Baker Mayfield is the best, but for the sake of being different, I'm going to throw out, and I haven't Googled this, so I could be wrong, but to my memory, Clay Matthews was a walk-on.
Yes, he was on the list I just looked up. So.
And growing up for me, of course, I was probably the only one of us who was growing up when Clay Matthews was playing football. But he was always a guy I looked up to. I know you were there, but I'm saying you were a little further down the line than I was. I remember being like in middle school is what I'm saying.
I got you.
But he was great for the Packers. Loved watching him play. And all around was always just like a great dude. I remember he had appearances on like WWE stuff. He showed up on SNL. But great football player as well. So I'm going to go with him.
The Clay Matthews name is very big in Cleveland. I don't know if you guys know this. His Clay Matthews' dad, Clay Matthews Sr., played for the Browns, was really good. I don't know much about him, but every year the Browns do like a get him into the Hall of Fame thing, and it never works, and it's pretty funny. But yeah, no, I agree. Clay Matthews, especially with the long blonde hair, just great guy. Played for the Packers for a while. But yeah, I like both those picks, Hunter Renfrow and Clay Matthews. All three white guys too. Who would have thought? But yeah, so that's going to do it for our longest episode of the Muffed Punt Podcast. Fellas, it's been a great season of college football. We've had a blast. I think you guys can say if you haven't, I don't know. And we're only getting to the best part. So I guess any last words from you two? And I'll say happy hunting this weekend because we've all got 11 picks. And it's very possible that next week we could all be 11 games in the hole or 11 games in the clear. So any last words from you two?
Always go Irish. Hold my team in, baby. Let's go.
Yeah.
I got to change mine up a little bit. I've been talking about the lane train every week. I guess it's scared money, don't make money.
There you go. Let's rock.